Good morning, everybody, and I'd like to welcome all councillors and members of the public to the latest meeting of Northamptonshire's Executive. Members, you are reminded to keep your microphones muted and your laptops muted, and only keep them on when you need to speak. Item number 1 on the agenda is apologies for absences. Are there any apologies?
I've not received any, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of October 2022. The minutes are set out on page 5 to 26 of your agenda pack. Are there any comments in respect to their accuracy? I'll take that as a no. Okay. Can I have a mover to adopt these minutes, please? Councillor Harrison, and a seconder, please. Councillor Brackenbury. Minutes have been approved. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 3, members' declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from any members? Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Declare another interest that in relation to my work outside the council, I may have attended meetings that relate to some of the agenda items, but was just there in a note-taking capacity.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. No issue with that. Okay. Okay, item 4, notifications to request to address the meeting. There's quite a few, so I'm not going to read them all out. However, we will call you as and when those items come up. Item 5, performance indicator report for 22-23, period 6. I'd like to invite Councillor Lloyd Bundy, Executive Member for Finance Transformation, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an update on the Council's performance and measured key performance as measured by key performance indicators at period 6, that is April to September 2022. Appendix A shows detailed information about the performance of the Council and, in summary, of all reported KPIs, 58.5% are on target or are performing better than target. 13.8% are underperforming against the target but are within a 5% tolerance. 27.7% are underperforming against the target by more than 5% tolerance. It should be noted that this is a living report and is being continually refined and improved. Officers continue to work on improvements within the narrative to explain variances and actions taken to address performance issues. Members will obviously wish to concentrate on the performance of their own portfolios, but highlighting some, the Council's customer service team helped nearly 47,500 customers, and around 3,000 of these were seen face-to-face in our customer service centres. Our highways team have repaired nearly 1,800 road defects, and nearly 94% of food establishments are considered to be broadly compliant with food hygiene legislation. Appendix P provides a range of workforce data, and I'm happy to propose the recommendation of paragraph 3, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. Members, do we have any comments on any of those performance indicators? Councillor Lorman.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Councillor Bundy mentioned the highways, and you'll notice a steady decline in the number of defects outstanding, which is good, and it's partly thanks to our investments in that, and also the number of defects repaired has gone up, and also the amount of fly tipping has gone down steadily, you'll notice, which we're very pleased to see.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Okay, looking around the table, I don't see there's any other comments. Councillor Bundy has moved that report. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Binley, thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 28 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 6, Hackney carriage fares and tariff. I would like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting. Of course, Councillor Lee, you know you have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair.
Harmonising the taxi fares has been a very complex operation that has taken a lot of effort. It is a shame that at licensing meetings taxi drivers have not been able to speak, but the 515 objections received from Corby residents need to be listened to and taken into account. The business of charging less than is shown on the meter has been repeated several times here as something that's just a convenient solution. But it's so complicated in practice that taxi drivers have been given conflicting advice by the members of the licensing team themselves. I have been sent copies of emails by taxi drivers, and the licensing officer yesterday acknowledged that information given to Corby taxi drivers was wrong, so it's confusing for the licensing officers themselves. Credit to the licensing officer for acknowledging this and putting this right. Also credit to licensing officers for understanding the issue of shift workers between 5 and 6, which has already been adjusted. There is a simple way now to resolve this complex issue, as suggested explicitly in comments 51 and 20, and indirectly in many of the other comments, by enabling drivers to drop tariff 2, namely the 50% extra for hirings begun after 5 a.m. on a Sunday. I think if that simple change would be made, if for Corby, if they're allowed to drop the tariff 2 on a Sunday, which is what they're asking, just that one exception to make a very complicated situation simpler, to find a compromise. And yes, the taxi drivers in Corby asked for a fare increase, as other taxi drivers did, but the 50% extra in fares on the Sunday, that's a very big jump, and it would hit the nighttime economy in Corby as well. So I'm asking, please, to consider this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Pengelly.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm talking as a Corby councillor today, not as Chair of Scrutiny. And Corby is a unique town when it comes to taxis. We're not Kettering, Wellingborough or Higham Ferrers, but we run our taxi trade completely different, and it's been very strictly regulated over many years. This worked. When decisions are made by any organisation, whether it's a government, a local council, or even a social club, they've got to be clear, concise, easy to understand, and easy to put into place. And the decisions that we're taking, I drove taxis for many years. I ran a coach firm for many years until about 3 years ago. I know how it works, and I do not understand this in any way. It's really, really confusing. 500 members from this town, 500 people from this town have got in touch with this council and told us we're not happy with it. Some people under this cost of living crisis, I'm not going to go into why we have a cost of living crisis, but there's a cost of living crisis there, acknowledged by the government. People have to be having to pay 100% more to get to work, 100% more to get to church. Is that right in this day and age when we're going through a cost of living crisis to put this on the people of town? And it's a confusion. And why you've not got any taxi drivers here today is they've just said, we're going to set whatever rates we want underneath the tariff. That's okay for the taxi trade. I'm not here for the taxi trade. I'm here for Joe Public. I'm here for the lady that lives on Greener Rise Shops. That on the Monday, she could pay £3.85. On the Tuesday, £2.85. On the Wednesday, she get into a cab and it could be £4. On the Thursday, £2.70. And when she gets into a cab with her mates on a Friday night, it'll be £4.50. And they'll have to go at the taxi driver for ripping them off. But they're below that rate. And she'll go, oh, the other day it was £2.70. You're ripping us off. So there'll be letters to the council. Adele will be getting involved. It's total confusion. And there's something that we can't allow to happen. I understand and I fully agree that we as a council have to be unified. We have to have the same thing all over North Hampshire. I fully understand that. And I remember, some of us remember housing and our rents in housing. We looked at putting them up a little bit extra for council housing over 5 years. So we had a level playing field after 5 years with the private rented sector. I'm sure that's something that we could look at. This is a really, really difficult situation for people to understand, and I'm urging you to look at it again. And also, what Councillor Lee said, the double time on a Sunday and you're hitting people that go to church. You're hitting the Corby daytime economy. Pubs are suffering right now. Restaurants are suffering. It's going to cost a lot more to get people to these places. They're just going to say, we're going to stay in. We're not going to go out. So let's try and look at this again. I know it's difficult, but it just isn't going to work, and the people of the town won't be happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pengelly. I'd now like to invite Councillor Cahoon to address the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Executive. Also on item 6, I would reiterate what my colleagues have mentioned, Chair. Another example of harmonisation. The last time I was in this room, I complained about the notion of harmonisation. I've come to fear that word, actually. But on the issue of the taxi fares, Chair, I'm a Northants councillor. I'm not a Corby councillor. I don't represent only Corby. I don't represent only the interests of Corby. I'm interested in the whole of the authority. But I have to say that of the former 4 sovereign councils, we all have our uniqueness and our own uniqueness in certain areas. And I think with regard to taxis, Corby is fairly unique from the other 3 former authorities. Some comments that have been made over the course of these discussions have been less than accurate, one might say. And I was just reading last night a comment from CHOA, the Corby Taxi Drivers Association, which states quite clearly they've taken professional advice that says that the meter must be set to a tariff set by the local authority. We know that, and we know that the executive has said that we may, Corby taxi drivers may enact a lower tariff. This, of course, is going to create chaos, and Councillor Pengelly has just expressed the silliness of it. What we ask is that you consider the Corby Taxi Drivers Association's objections and requests, which includes the 515 objections received from Corby. Yes, there was repetition in quite a lot of them, of course. But these objections came from Corby and not the other areas, and I think that shows that Corby needs to be considered, given the opposition there. If the others didn't object, then that's so be it. But Corby did object to the tune of 515, plus the CHOA representatives approaching council at every opportunity and taking it further and taking legal advice. Obviously shows a very great dissatisfaction with the proposed decision of the executive. As Councillor Pengelly states, this impacts all across the local economy with
Councillor
people...
Cocoon, that's your 3 minutes up, I'm afraid. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'd like to now invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to reiterate what especially Councillor Cahoon has just said, in that there is something unique in Corby. I've seen it, we've all seen it. Quite right, there are 500 objections. Don't forget the 1,500 signatories to the petition before that. Corby cabbies are unique in the way that the whole thing is set up, and I think that you ought to take into account their knowledge, their expertise, their knowledge of what goes on the ground. This is their livelihoods, as well as the uniqueness of the transport systems around Corby. I understand harmonisation, but you've got a paper, the next but one, coming that says there are uniqueness within our county in terms of making sure that people in rural areas are have that same opportunity as the urban areas of Northamptonshire. And I think that you need to look at, you know, are there problems here? Can we solve it in a different way than just saying, oh, well, you've got to fit into that pigeonhole? Or do we listen to what the people are telling us? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckingham. I'd now like to invite Councillor David Brackenbury to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody who's spoken both on this meeting and on previous meetings so eloquently about this complicated business. And I hope that this morning will put some minds at ease. We've, of course, noted the responses to the objections which were received to the decision which was reached at the Executive back on the 27th of September 2022. And we also note the legitimate requests by the Hackney carriage trade across all of Northamptonshire for an increase in fares, which will cover the increased costs of motoring and, of course, the increased costs of living, which naturally affect Hackney carriage drivers just as much as they affect users of Hackney carriages. And, you know, the request for a fares increase has been made in all four former sovereign areas of Northamptonshire. Now, we do note that there are some objections that we've received to any rise in fares at all, but we do feel that it is appropriate for an increase to be granted on this occasion, taking into consideration the fact that there has been no increase in fares for many years in the various areas of Northamptonshire. As has previously been discussed at the Executive, we are proposing that the maximum fare structure be unified across the Northamptonshire Council area so as to provide clarity and consistency across the district. So if a Hackney carriage cannot charge more than the fixed tariff across this area, wherever this may be, and this will feed into a larger piece of work which will harmonise Hackney carriage and private hire policies across the district. As in previous discussions, Chair, we have carefully noted the objections received in the Corby area, which object to the harmonisation of fares. And I do sincerely congratulate the Corby Hackney Owners Association and their supporters and those who, as I said, have spoken at these meetings with their impressive unity, organisation and solidarity. And while the tariffs that are set out by the local authority are the maximum that may be charged, there is no obligation on the part of Hackney carriage operators to charge this maximum, and they may wish to charge less than the maximum fare to reflect local circumstances, such as perhaps in the Corby area. It's important, Chair, to set the legal context, because I do note what Councillor Lee and other colleagues have said, that there seems to have been some confusion. In the judicial review, and this is held to be gospel in the taxi trade, in the judicial review at Regina versus Liverpool City Council, ex parte Curzon Limited, which basically means it's reviewing a decision Liverpool City Council held against a Hackney carriage operator, Curzon Limited. It was held by Mr. Justice McCulloch that Hackney carriage meters may be set at a lower rate than that authorised by the Council under their table of fares. It will nevertheless be necessary for Hackney carriage vehicles to display the local authority rates, whatever local charges may be adopted. It is therefore entirely within the Hackney carriage operators right, if they wish to set the meter at a lower rate, they may do so, and that has been held. In the court, and we do recognise the special role that Hackney carriages play in the Corby area. We recognise the special role that Hackney carriages play across Northamptonshire, but we do note that Corby has always been very much a black cab town, and we want this trade to continue to thrive in these difficult times. We believe the increase is fair and reasonable across Northamptonshire, and we know that the well-organised Corby Hackney owners will be able to consider any changes reflecting their local circumstances within the maximum fares allowed by Northamptonshire Council. Before I close, Chair, I would like to reiterate my thanks to all those who have responded to the consultations that have gone on this. I would also like to thank officers and members for their patient work in getting us to this stage, and I commend the report to Executive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brackenbury. Members, I'm looking for some comments from yourselves. Do we have any? Councillor Lorman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury, for the introduction. And yeah, I'd like to join him in thanking the officers. It is an extremely complex process when we have 4 former zones to there's just a couple of things. I mean, I would like to point out that none of the other 3 former areas had any objections. They obviously see these as reasonable rates. But also, there's something I didn't realise. In paragraph 4.6, it says it should be noted where journeys are booked in advance, the fare can be agreed between the driver and the customer before the start of the journey, and there's no requirement for the fare to be calculated by the meter as long as the fare paid does not exceed the maximum stipulated. So there is a further opportunity there for drivers to look after their potential clients if they feel there's an affordability problem there. So all in all, I'm happy to accept this report as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I would just like to thank Councillor Brackenbury and his team for bringing this rather complex matter to a conclusion really today. And, you know, we are aware the lifeblood of taxis is so much so important for people to get to and from work, to and from, you know, family members, and also, you know, for recreational purposes. So, you know, we don't underestimate the level of feeling in this area. However, as Councillor Brackenbury has already said, that there was a general feeling from other members of the Hackney associations that this was to be welcomed. But if there's no other comments, let's go to the vote. The recommendation, so Councillor Brackenbury has moved the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lorman. The recommendations are on page 64 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Unanimous, Chair. Thank you. So agenda item 7, Northamptonshire Council taxi and private hire policy. I would like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting. Councillor Anne Lee, you have up to 3 minutes.
Right. Chair, thank you, Chair. Once again, at the licensing committee meeting, no taxi drivers were allowed to speak. In fact, it's only when we came outside and when a few councillors spoke to the drivers who had been patiently watching the debate, all the councillors who'd been listening, including Councillor Laura Lorman, acknowledged that really there was a lot we could have learned from those taxi drivers that we didn't know about some of the proposals made. And that's what happens when you don't listen to people. We are not listening. We are not listening to the consultations. We're not listening to the opinions expressed by the people who know more about it, who've got to live with the outcome of your decisions. There is a contradiction in this policy in 4.8 on page 95 about some vehicles that are allowed to have a longer life than other vehicle types. the life of these Hackney cabs of up to 15 years, but in Article 6.2.16 on page 138, I read that new and replacement vehicle license applications between the date of the policy coming into force and 31 March 2025 must meet the Euro 6 emission standards, but vehicles taken in use since 2015, only those vehicles meet the Euro 6 emission standards. So if a vehicle was taken in use in 2014, for example, the owner will only get 11 years out of it, not 15. That's a sort of contradiction that you would have learned about if you'd spoken to the taxi drivers. And for TX cabs, exactly the same point applies on 6.3.13 on page 141. Again, can I appeal that when we implement such changes, please allow people from the trade and members from the public to speak at the licensing committee meetings or hold brief meetings where these points can be discussed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I just wanted to make clear that in the licensing committee, there is no mechanism for members of the public to speak. That is something, obviously, that can be raised, and constitutions can be changed. But that's why, obviously, no one was allowed to speak, because it's not a mechanism to allow them in the rules of that particular committee. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Brackenbury to introduce the report, please.
Thank you again, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lee, for your comments. Obviously, while the leader has explained the constitutional position, you will, of course, note that the policy has been out to extensive consultation, and there has been a considerable response received from it. So, I mean, I take the point that there has been detailed consultation on this policy. No, it's my pleasure to introduce this policy, which I think is essentially a policy with which we can all agree, because what we're seeking to do is to raise standards in the Hackney carriage and private hire trades, so that the vehicles are in as good condition as possible, that we move towards the net zero emissions. As I say, we move towards that. We do appreciate that that's a balancing act, because naturally we have to take into account all that we need to do to protect the environment. But we also have to reflect practicalities in the trade moving forward, and the fact that it is a substantial investment to buy new vehicles, which is why these things are being carefully phased. We've noted and taken into consideration concerns which are raised by parties over the consultation to do with age limits on licensed vehicles, to do also with the emission standards, as I've just touched upon. We've had a particular item on fold-down seats in vehicles. Now, these are not simply movable seats. These are literally fold-down, removable seats in certain vehicles, which we do not consider should be part of the licensing framework. And naturally, we also did a substantial separate piece of work on the training and testing regime for drivers, both in terms of their technical skills, their own knowledge of the area, and of course, the very important issues of safeguarding and looking after vulnerable people and disabled people in plying the trade. We are looking to have the very highest standards possible across Northamptonshire. We recognise that in the Hackney carriage and private hire trades, there is already, Chair, very, very high standards in most of the operations. So, this is something that I think is already much being taken into consideration. So we just need to make sure that the policies reflect these high standards so that the customers in Northamptonshire can be confident when they ring to hire a private hire vehicle, or when they get into a Hackney carriage on the rank, that they are going to be looked after in the best possible way. There will be a number of responses that have been discussed regarding zero-emission vehicles. And at this stage, we have removed the point that from 2025, no new applications will be accepted for vehicles fueled only by diesel or petrol. It does, however, mean that the authority still moves to requiring zero-emissions vehicles from 2031, and all licenses for non-zero emission vehicles would expire at the end of 2030. Now, we do want to provide leadership in terms of moving to zero emissions vehicles as soon as possible, but we also do recognise the considerable investment that drivers and operators have to make, especially in many respects in the rather more robust Hackney carriage vehicles, which are considerably more expensive. They're also rather more robust than a family saloon that you might see in the Hackney carriage world. And so we do have to take this into consideration. But I also would remind Executive that this is a document that is a living document. It will be reviewed in 2 years' time. We have to take into consideration technology as it emerges. I mean, for example, at the moment, there is probably not sufficient electric vehicle charging infrastructure across Northamptonshire for the trade easily to switch to zero-emission vehicles in the very short term. So this is something that we will continue to keep a careful eye on, and it's something that will be kept under review, and there will be a review in 2 years' time. And so, Chair, I hope that the Executive approve the policy and appendices with an implementation date on the 23rd of April. I again would like to thank members of the Licensing and Appeals Committee. I would again like to thank everybody who has responded to the consultation for their patient work on this. And I'd again, Chair, like to thank all the officers whose extremely hard work has brought us to this point. And with that, Chair, I move for recommendations at 3.1.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Members, do we have any comments on the policy brought before you today? Councillor Lorman.
It's getting to be a dual show. Councillor Brackenbury has stolen some of my thunder, but I wanted to just back up what he said. I know that the Licensing Committee spoke long and hard about the date for conversion to electric vehicles, and but I would suggest that it would benefit if taxi drivers were able to convert before the 2030 timescale when their vehicles came up. But my offer to them is to support them if they feel they need extra charging points, and if they let me know where they feel they need them. If they don't have off-road parking, for instance, then I'm happy to engage with them. We are about to consult on another nearly 100 sites across the authority, so we're happy to increase that number. And the other thing I'm pleased to see, one of the things that comes in my mailbag occasionally, if mailbags still exist, is issues with people with wheelchair not being able to get. And I'm pleased to see that the policy is quite clear that the only exemption is on medical grounds and for the drivers. So I hope that we'll be able to fully support our wheelchair-bound residents, because they need to get about as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lorman. Have any other comments? No? Okay. So, Councillor Brackenbury has moved the report. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Lorman, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 72 of the physical agenda pack and 94 of the electronic agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favours, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 8, which is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. I'd like to invite Councillor John McGee, Leader of our Opposition, to address the meeting. Thank you, Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I do note, Chair, for the first time that in the paper it mentions what the EAP discussed, a very brief paragraph, and for people that were at the EAP, remember how angry I was about this subject. And just remind me, Chair, do we actually have all that money yet? I don't think we do we? And given that the new Conservative leader nationally has said we need to tighten our belts, is it realistic that we will get all that money or not? I'm not sure. I hope so, Chair, for the sake of Northamptonshire, but I'm not holding up too much promise given what you said about going back to austerity. And, Chair, the reason I was angry about this was because this decision was made behind closed doors on what we should spend that money on. Can I ask, Chair, that with the minutes took of the meetings, 5 executive members, we're very hard working professional officers, and you'd have thought they would have put proposals forward. That's the way we usually do things at local government. We discuss that and maybe put our own forward. But members of the executive, mostly from East Northants, made these decisions. Is there minutes of these meetings, and can we see them, or do we have to put in a freedom of information request, which we know the officers are extremely busy with freedom of information requests already, so we don't want to do that. So I would request that
Councillor McGee, can you talk to the report, please?
I am talking to the report, Chair, and I'm going to the report. The reason I'm very angry about this report is I still don't get that you don't understand about levelling up areas and the levelling up agenda. There's nothing really within this report that the levelling up areas are getting anything over and above the rest of these areas. So there's still going to be left behind areas identified by your Conservative government. We've now got a Conservative executive who's ignoring that. We're going to get little bits. What you're actually doing is giving little sweeties, as we used to say in the old days, to these areas. They'll get little bits just to keep them happy and quiet. Well, that's not good enough. Some of this capital should have been spent in these levelling up areas. A huge difference could have been made in Kettering if we put a swimming pool there, on health, on well-being. No, we're not doing that, are we? There's things in here that can't even be measured properly, Chair.
Just for clarity, Councillor McGee, there is a swimming pool in Kettering.
It needs a new swimming pool, Chair, and I think we all agree that. There could have at least been a study into the viability of a new swimming pool in Kettering with this money. That will make a huge difference. We could have done that. What we have done is 5 members from the Conservative executive picked their little things that they want to do and left behind areas yet again. Well, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. We need to concentrate and put real money into these left behind areas.
Your time's up now. Thank you very much. I would like to invite Councillor Lee to address the meeting. Councillor Lee, you have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. It is hard to convey the extent of the disappointment about what we have seen so far of the plans for the Prosperity Fund. 711, page 5 from 3 says, the Shared Prosperity Fund is a great opportunity for the area to secure significant funding. It's supposed to meet the priorities of its local communities and businesses in support of the wider levelling up agenda. Instead, what we see so far is based on trickle-down economics, the sort of principle that has already been discredited, but this executive did not get the memo. A tourism centre in Rushden Lakes, which is already an affluent, prospering venture with a nature centre, is not what these funds are intended for. This Prosperity Fund is intended to help communities in crisis, people in poverty, with debt counselling and infrastructure for communities that don't have them. 4.6 refers to an analysis of data from a wide range of sources. Did this include the levelling up report by any chance? I have read about an enhanced community grant scheme for my community, £30,000, we've been told in the Grange, preparatory work to develop a programme for creating green spaces and so on. But I fear that the scale of these improvements to local green spaces in the 3 levelling up areas will pale into significance compared to the investment in affluent areas. Yes, the Greenway is a positive green project, but what businesses really want is to recruit workers who cannot afford petrol now to drive to work and safe cycleways to go to industrial areas, not just cycling in the weekends. Northamptonshire Sport cannot deliver the programme at once in my area because there is no lighting on the football pitch. It needs a new sports pitch, which would cost about £200,000, and I don't think the money will be found for that. With funding concentrated on Rushden Lakes and the Greenway, once again, investment goes to large projects in East Northants at the cost of areas for which the money was intended. So can we have a commitment that local walking and cycling infrastructure will be funded to enable children to cycle safely to school? For workers to cycle safely to work in industrial estates? There's no sign of that. The writing was on the wall when the 2 members of the Levelling Up working group, Zoe McGee and myself, were told we weren't welcome in a meeting where decisions would be made on this funding, because some decisions had already been made. When the entire 8 million is spent, I will be asking for a breakdown on where it all went, and I will be making a balance, we all will, of how much was actually spent on left behind communities to see if my initial impressions were wrong, and I do hope I will be proven wrong. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'd now like to invite Councillor Pengelly to address the meeting.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The first sentence of the report stated the UK SPF is a central pillar of the UK government levelling up agenda. That's what it says. And there's some really, really good stuff in there. The things about the grants, I think that's really, really good. If we take it on board, there's some stuff we can do. But there's a lot of unknowns, and that's what the problem is. I got questioned by the press on it, and I said I don't know really much about it, and if you're telling me it's going to Rushden Lakes, that's not what levelling up's about. Levelling up is not about Rushden Lakes. So there could be more in this, and what I'd like a commitment from the executive is come to the whole council and let us know exactly what we are or what we're not getting out of it. When you look at some of the money coming in, it's got money to help high streets, £10,000. That works out at £1,300 per town centre in North Northamptonshire. That's nothing. That won't get anybody anything whatsoever. But there may be, deep down in this report, that's not there. There may be some good things. There may be things that will go to the levelling up areas. It's just the unknowns in there. And I would ask the executive to give a commitment to get more information to us as members so we can fully understand this. The report doesn't tell us much. I've read it. I'm one of these people that have to read the report 4 or 5 times to take it in, and I've got lines under it and everything, and trying to work out what different monies will go into it. I can't find 1 penny going into the Kingswood estate, not 1 penny, apart from if we put in some grants. I'm sure there's more information in that, and if we can get commitment, then I'm sure we can work together on trying to make this better. But at the moment, it doesn't look very good for anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pengelly. I'd now like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting, please.
Good morning again, and thank you. Sorry, I had a bit of feedback. I want to talk on different parts of this, and I acknowledge what my colleagues are saying about the devil is in the detail. Really welcome the proposals for the rural proofing, as I said before earlier, especially where you've got most of the rural areas are quite affluent, looking at North Northamptonshire as a whole, but there are still pockets of deprivation, and I think that levelling up in those rural areas are going to be really important. Really disappointed looking at the appendix on page 93 that People and Skills doesn't have anything in there for the first 2 years. That the most money being spent in year one is going to be on the Rushden Lakes, and I understand we need to improve local economy, and I know that you have a proposal for making sure that that sort of greenway, and I fully understand that, but is that the right money to spend now when we're going into austerity, recession? You know, people aren't going to be spending a lot of money on, so is this the right time, right place for that money to be spent now? And again, you've got on E14 relevant feasibility studies, again, an enormous amount of money going into that compared with everything else in year one. You know, I know you've got to do feasibility studies, but why aren't some of those being done? You've had the opportunity to talk to people, and this doesn't seem like it's a people solution at this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckingham. I would now like to invite Councillor David Brackenbury to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. People will be getting tired of me. I'd like to introduce this report. I also would like to thank those who've just spoken to the report, and I obviously understand everybody's got their views about how the funding that we've been allocated is going to be split up. I'd like to first of all reassure Councillor McGee that this funding was allocated to Northamptonshire. This is not funding we're bidding for. This has been allocated so long as we put in the correct business case. And while there has been certain changes in Westminster, the current administration has made no changes to that. So we have been allocated the funding that you see. But no, we don't, as of today, we do not actually have the funds. As you will note, Chair, the funding is split into 3 streams. There is the Core UK Shared Prosperity Fund Investment Plan, and Northamptonshire has been allocated £4,835,000. Then there was also the Multiply Investment Plan, which allocates £1,909,000, and that is a specifically ring-fenced funding stream to support adult numeracy programs. And lastly, and much more recently, we've been allocated £1.16 million for the Rural England Prosperity Fund. It's probably worth pointing out that in the definition of rural England in this particular funding stream, that would cover every community in North Northamptonshire, with the exception of the 4 largest towns: Kettering, Corby, Wellingborough, and Kettering, Corby, sorry. Yeah, that's it, sorry. It would, however, include Rushden, which falls within the rural parameter. Moving on, of course, we have to carefully consider how funds are spent and how they can attract investment and footfall in Northamptonshire. You will note that there's been some comment about the Rushden Lakes Visitor Centre, but it is a serious advertisement for Northamptonshire and for everything that we do here. It isn't just only a shopping centre, and having a useful visitor centre in a operation which receives over 6 million visitors a year, most of whom come from outside Northamptonshire. It is important that we can promote everything that we do, both in terms of visitor attractions in terms of businesses and in terms of the local economy. So it does have serious importance to bolster that. I know colleagues are familiar with the Greenway project, which will provide probably one of the biggest active travel programs in the country, and a lot of work is going into that, and we are very supportive of that. But we haven't forgotten that there is deprivation in Northamptonshire. We haven't forgotten that there are left behind communities, and we haven't forgotten that they also need help. Before I go much further on, I do also just want to clarify a point Councillor Buckingham just made, and very appetitely from looking at the appendix, that she quite rightly points out that people and skills funding doesn't come in until 2024 to 2025, and that is so, but that is because currently people and skills are funded from existing EU funding streams which come to an end in that year, so that's why there's a transitional period. We will always seek to listen to the views of stakeholders in formulating how the somewhat limited funds that we have are allocated. A wide-ranging engagement exercise was undertaken with a consultation which received nearly 200 responses from all manner of local people, community groups, towns and parish councils and local businesses. The panel of executive members include my good colleague Councillor Binley, who is of course the member with responsibility for levelling up, and believe me, he does hold our feet to the fire on this. We are trying to provide a coordinated, well-balanced allocation of the funds that we have, both in terms of communities and place, in terms of supporting local business, and then, as we've said, as the EU funding comes to an end later in the period in terms of people and skills. You'll note at the top of page 85, it summarises some of the year one delivery plan projects that are already in the pipeline, and that includes at the bottom left, if you're looking at the top of page 85 on the paper pack, and at 4.11 on the report, you will note that we intend to develop a pipeline of projects to secure additional funding. So this isn't just about the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the various iterations of it. We also want to develop alternative sources of funding so that other projects can be delivered which may have been pump primed by UK SPF funding. We want to provide support to job seekers and employers in the weekly NN Job Club. We want to develop and deliver a 3-year programme of environmental improvements piloted in the left-behind communities to make them more attractive, to actually go back to the old theory that if an area looks a bit more attractive, it actually brings that area up. We aren't doing this behind closed doors. We do listen, and we want to listen to representations from anybody who can contribute, and we very much look forward to continuing a dialogue with that. So, Chair, we look to the recommendations at 3.1, and that the UK SPF interventions allocations, which are set out in section 4 in Appendix A, and are delegated to myself in consultation with my colleague, the executive member for Housing, Communities and Levelling Up, Councillor Binley, to agree any further details of delivery. To delegate authority to myself and my good colleague Councillor Howes, the Executive Member for Rural Communities and Localism, and the Executive Director of Place and Economy, to submit the Rural England Prosperity Fund Addendum, and to delegate authority to myself in consultation with the executive members for rural communities, localism and levelling up, and the executive director of place and economy, to consider the rural addendum with priority interventions for submission by the 30th of November. Sorry, that was a little bit of a mouthful. These titles get longer and longer the more we talk about it, getting a sore throat. But the recommendations I commend to executive and move the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. You articulated that beautifully. Councillor Howell, I know you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thank you to the members who spoke on this matter and Councillor Brackenbury. Just like to address a few issues that were raised by the speakers, actually. And one of the things that members may not be aware of is that obviously we had a lot of projects that came forward to us in all sorts of stages of development. But we had to look at projects that were ready to go on the shelf. It doesn't mean that moving forward we won't be considering all of the projects that came to us, but to enable us to go for this funding, we had to be in a position to actually put the bid in. So yes, there were a lot of other projects. They will be still reviewed, but you know, we had to take the deadlines into consideration when we were doing this. On the Greenway, so I think you'll note that we're looking at doing a feasibility work on a master plan for the Greenway. So the Northants Greenway, as it is now, is a massive extension to what was the former East Northants Greenway. So we're developing a big master plan to encompass the whole of North Northamptonshire. And from that, we will be looking at accessibility to employment opportunities, to leisure opportunities. And yes, you're talking about people need to walk to work or they need to cycle to work. That's exactly what the Greenway is for. This is what we are addressing. We are looking at cutting down on people having to use their cars and everything. So this will be ultimately a really big project that allows people to get off the roads, to look at our green agenda, but also to allow them to use safe and secure access to places of employment and places of leisure and things like that. So that's why it's vitally important. It does hit all of those parameters that you're talking about, levelling up and all of those, because it provides people without access to vehicles the opportunity to get to places of employment, things like that as well. So actually, that will enable the whole of North Northants, once this is developed, to have better accessibility to all of our facilities and workspaces and everything. It also allows us to, the funding will be used to develop a formula for securing Section 106 developer money, which is really important to enable us to access that money to develop these facilities that people can access their work and places of employment and everything. So it is a huge piece of work to be done. And you are right, you know, when we're talking about, you mentioned Councillor Lee Kettering swimming pool. We're in the we're in the process, obviously, of having to do a sports and active lifestyle strategy. But these things come at a cost. They also, you can't do them at a drop of a hat. When you're looking at a sport and active lifestyle strategy, it has to take into account every season, so it takes at least a year. When you're looking at sport, football, rugby, swimming, anything, you have to look at it in the whole, not just maybe 1 month of the year. So that's why these things take time. And it's not to say that those aren't in the pipeline, because they obviously are. But without that strategy, we don't actually know what we really need here in North Northamptonshire. So that is why we aren't just throwing money at things, we're being strategic and we are looking at what we need. So I hope that's put your mind to rest on that. The Tourist Information Unit at Rushton Lakes, it's not about Rushton Lakes, it's about capturing the amount of people that go to Rushton Lakes, to encourage them to then invest their time and money in the rest of Northamptonshire. It will be, the hub will be accessible to everybody to go in and find out what else we have to offer in Northamptonshire. It's about generating income, it's about generating tourism, and it's about promoting Northamptonshire to the wider community outside of Northamptonshire and encouraging people to come here and spend their money. And it's done in conjunction with Rushton Lakes. They're very kindly supporting us fully to do this, so that and a lot of our other partners in the tourist industry, so that we can benefit from the tourism and the money that generates in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howes. Councillor Binley.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to those who commented earlier regarding the levelling up agenda and left behind areas. You're absolutely right to be raising it. And I think Councillor Brackenbury was very kind to me in the words that he said earlier when he said I'd been holding their feet to the fire, which I think was an understatement, and they probably were sick to death of me mentioning it during the meetings. However, what I would say is that during those meetings, of course, everybody that was involved was very receptive and very conscious of that matter. And I can assure people who raised those concerns regarding that my colleagues absolutely listened and therefore amended and adjusted their approach to the distribution of funding as a result, to make sure that in the most part it went to the areas where it was most needed. Of course, on that front, what I do have to add is that we do ultimately also have to see the bigger picture and not have a blinkered view. We cannot just put the money in left behind areas. We have to consider that by investing in the whole of Northamptonshire, as Councillor Howe has rightly mentioned with regards to Rushton Lakes, it has a wider impact and wider implications on the area with regards to generating interest, generating revenue for the whole of Northamptonshire, and therefore that spills over into the left behind areas. We absolutely have to remain focused on those left behind areas. Completely agree with that. However, we do have to be conscious of the fact that there will be a wider benefit to those left behind areas where we put money in other areas. And we also have to consider at the same time that as part of the levelling up agenda, there are other areas with deprivation as well. It, of course, is not necessarily to the same context as those left behind areas we have in Northamptonshire, but of course there is deprivation in other areas, including our, as quoted earlier, affluent rural communities. They're not all affluent. They have areas of deprivation. I would add that the report is very thorough, and I think the team have done a very good work. We have to remember that, of course, this is sketching the plans that we have. This is not the final polished version of exactly where the money will be going over those 3 years. And as a result, I do hasten to add that our report does contain the levelling up agenda throughout. It does contain the wording left behind, because we do have that focus. And not to draw the focus anywhere else, but I looked at one of our neighbours who have recently taken this paper to their executive, and not once does it mention left behind in their Shared Prosperity Fund paper. So I can assure you that this executive absolutely has their mind on that. And of course, I will continue to be a pain to Councillor Brackenbury, who I'm sure will say that I'm continuing to hold his feet up to the fire over this. So I do think that this is a really good start, and I think we're absolutely on the right footing with regards to using this funding for levelling up and left behind areas. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments from me. I think touching on some of the things that some of my colleagues have already said. So Councillor Howell talked about the development of a pipeline of projects, and I actually think that's one of the most important parts of this programme, because if we don't have projects ready to go, ready for future funding rounds, they can't get included because there's always tight schedules with bringing together business plans and putting together your proposals for government approval. And I think that's where we need to be, and already are, engaging with our communities and with other councillors and other organisations, which, as I said, we did do that. And a lot of projects were just ideas. They were certainly not projects that you would recognise that could be put forward. So we need to now work with those partners and work on those projects to get those ready for future rounds of funding. And I think it's always difficult with my view, when government gives you certain pots of money to do things with, because they stipulate very carefully what you can and can't do with that money. So when you see the words levelling up, you might think in your mind, right, we should be doing these projects. Those projects may not fit in with what the government wants you to spend the money on. So just highlight that as well. And then finally, I just want to say how pleased I am to see that the government accepted our proposal for the Multiply Fund, which is the Adult Numeracy Development Fund. My view is that was a really innovative and an imaginative proposal that was put forward. The money's going to be used in many, many different ways, and absolutely will help with our levelling up agenda, because it will get right to the root of some of the things that prevent people from being able to get a job, but even more fundamentally to be able to work their way through things that we might find very easy in terms of looking after themselves, being able to manage budgets, being able to cope with the cost of living crisis. So I think that I really am so pleased that we've got that and we can now get on with that and are getting on with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. I think my colleagues have made some really useful points, and thank you to the speakers earlier as well. It's really welcome that we do have this funding for Northamptonshire, and I'm confident that it will be used in a way that seeks to maximise the benefit for as many people locally as possible. Just to pick up on the Greenway, it's good to see that included in this. It's an important project for our area. And what I would really like to see, and I'm sure my colleagues, and I know that lots of people locally want to see, is the expansion of the successful sections that we already have and move those out across the rest of Northamptonshire, and inspire more people to cycle and walk to work. As a regular user of the Greenway, I see lots of people every day cycling, walking to work, and it'll be really good to see that benefit for more people across Northamptonshire as we get going with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Howes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, Councillor McGee will be pleased to know that I don't represent East Northants. I just wanted to pick up on the bit that I'm really pleased about, particularly is the money that's allocated for the rural part of the area, the 1.16 million. It's often the case, Chair, that pots of money end up coming and going into our larger towns and communities. And as Councillor Buckingham has said, there are pockets of the rural communities that are not as affluent as the perception might be. And that includes obviously businesses as well. So I'm delighted that we've got an allocation of this money. A bit disappointed in some of the speakers in terms of the negativity. I mean, this is a really, really positive report. We've been allocated millions and millions of pounds. I use the word allocated in terms of the rural aspect because it's not a given. We've got to put a business case forward. If you've got positive suggestions and ideas, let's have them, because that's what we're about. We're here to represent the entire community, and anything that you can add in terms of value to ensure that we get this money, because the rural parts of our area absolutely do need this money. 4.28 talks about, I won't go over the geographical area because Councillor Brackenbury's already covered it, but in terms of the rural, the support that it covers in terms of businesses that are benefiting the local economy, so that can be B2B and B2C. and there's lots and lots of businesses in our rural community that need support, and I'm excited and looking forward to the panel being created where we can work on that process. So I think that's about it, Chair. But I just really welcome this report. We need to get this money. We absolutely need to do the very best to passport it out to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howes. Councillor Lorman.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I agree with all the comments that my colleagues have made. I think one thing that has been missed, though, that all this work ignores the great progress and work that officers have made and the professional advice that they've given my colleagues in order to come up with this list. And you know, we do listen to their advice as well. With regard to the tourist centre, I can't think of a better place to advertise our wares than somewhere that gets 6 million visitors at least every year. It's an absolutely ideal location, and the knock-on effect will be that there'll be more and more jobs in hospitality as the individual sites get better advertising. So there is that's an investment in the North Northamptonshire that I support. In terms of the Greenway, we are currently doing 4 LC whips that will all feed into that. The Greenway is both for commuting, as we've heard, and for leisure activities. And as it happened, I was talking last week to the Active Travel Commissioner and emphasised him, and he is very interested. So that may well be that we'll get external funding from Active Travel England, and I'm hopefully coming to see it soon. So that sort of thing all feeds in, and we need to support it in order that we have make our commitments to carbon neutrality as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. Back to you, Councillor Brackenbury, to wrap up.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to thank everybody who's contributed to what I think has been quite a stimulating discussion this morning. Yeah, I mean, we are trying to spread some funding around all of North Northamptonshire. We're trying to target it intelligently. And it was a bit disappointing that we keep hearing, oh, but the executive's all on East North Hants. Well, we're not on East North Hants. There is no East North Hants. We are North Northamptonshire councillors. All of us that are councillors are North Northamptonshire councillors. And let's try to stop this sort of factionalism that sort of comes up. We are not now just representing East Northamptonshire or Kettering or Corby or Wellingborough. We are North Northamptonshire councillors, and while I appreciate and respect the important role the opposition play, and it's absolutely right that they do so, it doesn't matter. We are colleagues. We are North Northamptonshire councillors, and let's, for goodness sake, try within the realms of political discourse, of course, but let's try where we can to pull together. But leaving that aside, Chair, I really welcome this discussion. I welcome the support that colleagues have given to some of the excellent projects that are being highlighted in the report. Councillor Harrison's absolutely right. Developing a pipeline of projects that become oven ready to move forward when funding becomes available, whether it be in the UK Shared Prosperity Fund or whether it be any other form of government funding, because there are frequently little things that come from government, but you have very little time with which to react. So I invite colleagues, all North Northamptonshire colleagues, to engage with us. If you've got ideas, if you've got things that you think can be worked up to be in a business plan moving forward, for goodness sake, get in touch. You know, let's work together as far as we can. So, Chair, with that, I repeat my moving of the recommendations, without mercifully repeating everybody's title all over again.
Jolly good, Councillor Brackenbury. Thank you for sparing us that. So, Councillor Brackenbury has kindly moved the report. Can I look to have a seconder, please? Councillor Binley Thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 82 and 83 of the physical agenda pack and 506 and 507 of the electronic pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So we're now going to move on to item 9, provision of building cleaning services. I'd like to invite Councillor Lawman to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. North Northamptonshire Council has a number of operational properties of varying size and type and use across the authority. We now need to regularise the arrangements for cleaning these, as there were a number of different arrangements made by the former sovereign authorities, such that there are 12 separate contracts and 16 staff directly employed. Going to one contract will offer consistency, cost-effectiveness and some efficiencies. The option of bringing it in-house was discarded on this occasion, as a contract provides flexibility and capacity through the supplier as we rationalise our properties as well as resilience. We can also expect to be able to impose standard performance levels and reduce management pressures. Procurement would be through an existing framework rather than a full procurement exercise that takes longer and may cost more. Time is important, as some contracts end in January. Every effort to utilise a locally based supplier within procurement rules will be made. It's expected that current cleaning staff will be transferred under TUPE with all rights protected, including membership of the LGPS. Accordingly, I commend the report and the recommendations in paragraph 3.1 to the Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Lawman. Members, do we have anything to say on this item? Okay. Oh, Councillor Brackenbury.
Oh, just to say, Chair, it seems to be a very clear, very common sense report, and absolutely I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. So, Councillor Lawman has moved that report. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Howe. Sorry. The recommendations are set out on page 96 of the physical agenda pack and 520 of the electronic pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
That is unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So we now move on to item 10, street lighting upgrade. I'd like to invite Councillor Lawman, Executive Member for Highways, Travels and Assets, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you again, Chairman. The vast majority of the streetlights in North Northamptonshire are part of a PFI contract with Balfour Beatty, set up in 2011 by the former County Council. This report sets out the argument for replacing approximately 22,000 bulbs with modern LED lighting. It is not proposed that this recommendation covers the lighting owned by the former districts and boroughs due to a few technical and logistical problems with doing so. They may be part of a future programme. The LED lights would have the same luminescence and lighting standards and displays. There would not be any re-illumination of areas de-illuminated by the PFI contract. The scheme also gives us the opportunity to fit a central management system to the lights, which will enable us to control them when appropriate, providing potential operational, environmental and financial benefits. This scheme should be seen as an invest-to-save one, bringing significant revenue benefits for an initial capital outlay of approximately 6.17 million. This business case shows a break-even position after 9 years or 10.5 years for a whole cost scenario, depending upon energy cost increases, and is shown in Appendix B. The business case presumes a 5% annum increase and borrowing costs increasing in energy costs, and borrowing costs increasing to 5%. A further significant benefit is the reduction in CO2 gained through this scheme, as the new lamps use between 20 and 35% of the current energy levels, equating to a reduction of 500 tonnes of carbon dioxide for NNC. Funding for the scheme would come from borrowing through government Treasury prudential facilities. The scheme will require changes to the PFI contract, but officers are confident that this could be achieved. The likely timescale for installation is 120 weeks after a 12 weeks mobilisation period. After this, we would benefit from an increased warranty period as well. Whilst this may be seen as a significant investment, the likely financial and energy and CO2 emission benefits make this a project that can be beneficial and therefore supported. Accordingly, I commend this report to the Executive and propose the recommendations in paragraph 3.1.
Thank you, Councillor Lawman. Do we have any comments from members? Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very welcome report. It was, as you can see in the report itself, discussed at the Climate Change, Environment and Growth Executive Advisory Panel, where it was really welcomed, particularly in terms of the reduction in emissions. I know other areas locally have pursued this and they've been really pleasantly surprised by how much energy they've saved, and obviously the positive environmental aspect of doing so. So happy to see this come forward and supportive of it.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Binley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to speak in favour of this. As members may recall, especially members of the opposition, this is something that I've spoken about before in the chamber with regards to not just switching back on some of our old energy inefficient street lighting that will cause damage to the environment. So I'm really pleased to see this come forward. It's really inspirational work that's being carried out. Thank you, Chair.
Well done, Councillor Binley. Okay. So the report has been moved by Councillor Lawman. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Howes, thank you very much. The recommendation are set on page 106 and 107 of the physical agenda pack and 530, 531 of the electronic pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you. Item 11, the proposed amalgamation of Tennyson Road Infant School and Alfred Street Junior School. I would like to invite Councillor Jill Mercer to address the executive.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm speaking as a ward councillor for this area. At the EAP on the 25th of October, the panel members seemed confused by the consultation on the merger of Alfred Street School and Tennyson Road School. I replied to that consultation and I was confused. I said I was opposed to the proposal, although I'm not against the merger of the two schools. I then put all my other comments in the section saying why I supported it. The cause of this confusion was that the preamble stated it's recommended that Tennyson Road Infant School is a school that is closed and the age range of Alfred Street School expanded, but then goes on to say this does not prejudge the site, name, staffing or any other aspect of the new school. Many people responded about the merits of choosing Tennyson Road over Alfred Street. For instance, at 6.3.2, it states the most frequent response, 38%, was concern about taking children to and from the Alfred Street site. The analysis of the replies did not explain that many of these answers were not applicable, since neither site would close. Had it done so, there'd have been less confusion for people reading this report. The reason people refused, though, goes back to the EAP of the 26th of January. The minutes of that meeting state the first consultation will be just on the decision on whether to merge or not. The second consultation, depending on the result of the first, will then identify a site for expansion. This was a second consultation. The January report also stated it's the preference of the governing bodies to locate the newly amalgamated school on a single site. Given this background, many people thought that this consultation was to decide which site to close. Consultations must be clear. The public must understand what they're being asked. This consultation was not clear. The situation may have changed since January, but knowing what was said then, the expectation was that this second consultation was to decide on a single site. Despite this confusion, it's clear that the majority are in favour of a merger. At the latest EAP, the members were told there was no intention of going to a single site, so I'm happy to support this current proposal. Anne-Marie Dodds also said that if the governors later decide to merge on one site, this will be explored at a later time. So far, there's been no analysis of which site should be chosen if there ever was a move to a single site. If that happens, a full investigation of the merits of each site will be needed, and there would need to be further consultation. At such a time, I would request that the ward members and other stakeholders, such as the Town Council, be kept fully informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. I'd now like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to come and speak.
Good morning. Amalgamation of Tennyson Road Infant School and Alfred Street Junior School. I feel the amalgamation of Tennyson Road and Alfred Street is a positive thing for these two schools to become one. However, this has been going on. This going on long process due to the former county council who dragged its feet for many years. The questionnaire to the parents, etc., was not straightforward, and some aspects were not clearly defined. Moving on, what happens next? Both head teachers should have been involved in this process, but they were not, sadly. We must make sure that funding is in place happens. Alfred Street School leaks. Wi-Fi must be up to standard for these schools. Staff must be involved in these changes. Who goes, who stays by December, January 23. Sorry. Advertising for new pupils must be in place. Not half a year, year 1 with year 2 or year 3 with year 4. New parents must be made aware of the with advertisement and open days. In Tennyson Road / Alfred Street, Rowan Gate, which rents 2 classrooms, must be completely separate to this school because it has different requirements, with 1-to-1 in some cases. Alfred Street should not be exposed to disruptive pupils who disrupt the classes. This has to happen because giving a first-class education to these children from 2023. The future of the staff must be decided, and the governing body must include the head teachers, who are paramount to advising the structure of the school and the curriculum. Lastly, the Children's Trust, DFE, NNC, must find that the school meets the requirements of a first-class education, no half measures, which has happened by the County Council for years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell, and I'm pleased to hear you're supportive of the merger, and I know how passionate you are about education. But I will now hand over to my colleague, Councillor Scott Edwards, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the 2 councillors that spoke on this. And thank you, Councillor Maxwell. I know we've spoken many a time on this subject, and thank you for your comments on that. And I can assure you that the governing bodies will be fully involved with anything that happens to these 2 inspirational schools that are going forward. And I do just want to make it clear that we are not closing a building. Okay, so I know there has been some confusion around this. And Councillor Mercer, absolutely, ward councillors are always involved with consultations, and I'm very pleased that you took part in the consultation of this one, as well as Rushden Town Council and Higham Ferrers Town Council, who were both informed of this consultation at the very beginning. In the consultation itself, it did say, and it says, and I shall read it out to you, that this proposal has no impact on the operation of the all-through primary school across the 2 existing sites. Any proposals to change how the school operates, including changing the use of either site, would be subject to appropriate further consultation. So it did make it clear in that we would not be closing a site, and that actually it was a technical closure of one of the names, which did come up at the last executive meeting that we talked about this as well. So the report is to inform the Executive of the outcomes of the statutory period of formal consultation, which was approved by the Executive on the 25th of August, and seek its decision on the proposed amalgamation of Tennyson Road Infant School and Alfred Street Junior School, as requested by the governing bodies. The consultation sought views on the creation of a single all-through primary school that would, in the first instance, continue to operate across the 2 existing sites. And as I've said before, any proposed change to this would be led to further consultation. The formal consultation ran for 4 weeks and was open from the 5th of September to the 2nd of October 2022. The consultation was hosted on the Council's Consultation and Engagement Hub. It was supported by information documents, including the statutory notice, frequently asked questions, and a brief paper containing a clear outline of the proposal so that consultees could provide informed feedback. Notification of the consultation was also published on the local BBC News website, sent to councillors, teaching and support staff, union representatives, local members of Parliament, town and parish council, partner organisation, members of the Council's consultation register and members of the North Northampton residents panel who reside within the local area. In total, 86 respondents filled out a questionnaire, either partially or fully. And you will see that in that report, the responses of those responses. You will see that it is clear that the vast majority support the merger of the two schools. With that, I move to the recommendations on page 557 to endorse the proposal that we merge the two schools within that area.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards. Sorry, the Monitoring Officer wants to speak.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, the recommendations within the report don't either say that you want to merge or don't want to merge. So can we just make sure that as you're moving, are you moving that you do merge the schools, amalgamate the schools, or that you don't? So we're just clear for the minutes.
The recommendation is to merge the two schools, yes.
Thank you very much for that, Monitoring Officer. So, members, do we have any comments to make in respect to the paper? No. Okay, so if you look at your... well, actually, no, we better move it. It's been moved by Councillor Edwards. Can I look to someone for seconding it, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. So that's been moved and seconded. And the recommendations are set out on page 114 of the physical agenda pack and 546 of the electronic agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour? That's fantastic. Okay, so we have concluded the business up to item 11. Being this is a long agenda, I would propose that we take a quick comfort break now for 10 minutes and then move on after that. Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much for that. And we now move on to item 12, which is a procurement and implementation of a children's social care case management system. I'd like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I presume it's afternoon.
It just feels that way.
Got another hour. Have we got another hour? Yes. Oh, crikey. Thank you. My statement is around clarity, I think, because I remember an item like this, or this coming up before a committee before, about the case management system, and the money that was asked for at that time. And I think I just want to be clear on, you know, the money spent then was about £1 million something. So why are we being asked for more money again is what I wanted clarity on, I think, on this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Buckingham. And just for your information, the current contract ends in 2025, and there would be a cost of procurement to replace that system. I'd now like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting.
Procurement and implementation of children's service care case management system. Following a decision of Children's Social Care Services in Northamptonshire Children's Trust, and at the direction from the Secretary of State of Education to replace two to a unitary council, is it not time now for NNC to take responsibility and be solely responsible for delivering our own programme? This system is vital to support the improvements of children in social care practice and the outcomes for all children. Would you not consider sorting this out for January 2025, which would mean that we have control over what happens to the children in NNC? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. If only if it was as simple as us taking back control and the system being linked. That's not quite the case. But I'd like to invite Councillor Scott Edwards to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Buckingham, yeah, it did go to the Capital Board beginning of this year, but further investigation, it is now considered to be not capital, but revenue. So that's perhaps where it's coming from. Yeah, because it's a cloud-based system, it's now considered it is revenue rather than capital. Yeah. And Dorothy, yes, as the leader has said, you know, if it was only that easy to do that, but no, not at the moment. So this report is to seek the Executive's approval to proceed with the replacement of the case management system for children's social care across Northamptonshire by Northamptonshire Children's Trust. The relationship between the councils and the Children's Trust is governed by a set of contractual agreements. Under the terms of these agreements, the Children's Trust is responsible for the delivery of children's social care. However, the council retain the responsibility for the provision of a database that allows the Children's Trust to deliver its services. This is one of the key contractual dependencies on the councils in the contractual arrangements. A previous capital bid for funding of the procurement and implementation costs associated with the social care case management system was submitted to the board in June 2022. However, following the Capital Board and further due diligence, this is now being confirmed as a revenue bid for a decision on finance of the programme of work, as it was deemed that an asset would not be created and cannot therefore be funded from capital resources. We currently have analysis of the Eclipse product. However, despite the effort in February 22, the conclusion was that there was no way forward with the current Eclipse contract, and therefore a new procurement is now needed. The scope of the programme is for the procurement and implementation of a new IT case management system for use by the Children's Trust under the Children's Trust contract to provide services to children and families across Northamptonshire as a whole. The estimate of the programme of work is 2.8 million, and the works is split out on page 588. This is, of course, split between North Northants and West Northants as a 44% and a 56% basis, meaning that North Northants would contribute £1,236,015. The recommendations are on page 586, and I move to the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Just looking to members, is there any comments about this piece of paperwork? No? Okay, so we move on. So Councillor Edwards has moved the report. Can I look for someone to second it, please? Councillor Howell, sorry. The recommendations are set out on 130 of the physical agenda pack and 586 of the electronic agenda pack. They've now been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you. So we move on to item 13, the Integrated Care Northamptonshire Strategy Outcomes Framework for North Place Delivery. And I would like to invite Councillor Maxwell to address the meeting.
Integrated Care Northamptonshire Strategy Outcome Framework, North Place Delivery. I think this integrated care in Northamptonshire is a step forward, but in real terms, we still have issues. No bus services in villages. These people, 20 years forward, are now unable to get out and travel to the doctor's shops or use community facilities. One surgery of 11,000 people has 2 doctors, 4 nurses. In the villages, 1 doctor, no nurses. They are unable to travel due to no bus service. I think on page 621, the chart shows how healthy needs have not been addressed. This is partly due to not assessing health needs for older people. Obese children is on the increase due to lack of activity. This is due to play and also swimming clubs, etc. The social economic factors and pay is part of people's lives, and 0-hour contracts are to blame. Low-income jobs is the fault of working conditions in the area. Poverty, food poverty and fuel poverty and lack of affordable housing has an impact on people in rural areas. Green open spaces are all right if you have the income to support this. However, sadly, people do suffer from COVID and this has not helped. Health inequalities cause deprivation and unless we address it, this will continue. This report clearly sets out the future needs, but it's useless unless we get the work done and that it helps with it does not help with no transport. Free swimming was a great success during half term. How many used it? Can this continue? We must not forget that the ageing population need care, but bed blocking comes at a price and we have to be ready for it. People should not be left in hospitals.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Harrison, would you like to introduce the report, please? Councillor McGee, I will allow you to speak. You're not written down here, unfortunately, but we'll make an exception just for you.
Chair, it was put in number 8 and 13, and I got the email saying it was. And you'll be glad to know it's nothing too controversial, Chair. But thank you for allowing me to speak in the mix-up. There's two things I just wish to raise, Chair. I believe in the integrated care system. It's Andy Burnham, I believe, started it many years ago. But it won't work. And I look at the recommendation, Chair. The Executive has to consider alignment of existing and future NCC strategies. Where is the mention of the aligning of budgets? Because unless we align budgets with our partners, other organisations, we're not going to have that integrated care system. So budgets coming from housing, coming from all our partners, including police, etc. We have to align budgets if we want a true integrated care system. So I would expect you to have seen something in there about that, and unfortunately I didn't. And Chair, can I just mention one thing? And I've talked about this for many years. The lifespan expectancy, the differences across this county is quite dramatic. From here to Oundle, it's over 10 years. And unless we concentrate in the areas that have the most difficulties and try and bring that figure or make that figure better, if we try to do it North Hampshire wide without concentrating on the areas where we know there is real difficulties with health, and then we'll still be doing here the same thing. 25 years ago I had this conversation and the figures aren't much better now. So we really need to concentrate in the areas where we have these difficulties, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. So I now move to you, Councillor Harrison, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to provide an overview of the development of the Integrated Care Northamptonshire Strategy and Outcomes Framework. As you will recall, this is one of the responsibilities of the Integrated Care Partnership, of which I am a co-chair. A lot of work has gone into looking at existing strategies, the joint strategic needs assessment, and the health inequalities that exist. And the document that has been produced is quite a meaty document, but you'll be pleased to know there's lots of pictures in there, so it doesn't take as long to read as it looks. But it covers 10 areas that we wish to see as our priorities, and takes a life cycle approach. And I think you'll see that these already align very well with North Northants Council's own strategies. But obviously, as this develops more, we'll want to align our strategies even more closely in order that we are able to deliver on our commitments that we make as partners in the integrated care system. So the 10 ambitions are, I will read them out to you here. They're the best start in life, access to the best available education and learning, opportunity to be fit, well and independent, employment that keeps people and families out of poverty, good housing in places which are clean and green, feel safe in homes and when out and about, connected to family and friends, chance for a fresh start, access to health and social care when they need it, valued for who they are. And I think what you can see there is that the focus of this strategy is on the wider determinants of health, which is exactly what you were pointing out, Dorothy. All the things that you mentioned are things that are part of the, they are the wider determinants of health, which are proven to have a greater effect on your health and well-being outcomes than the healthcare that you receive and the formal services. So these are absolutely key, and this is a really high-level strategy that our local plans will fit into, and is a sort of 5 to 10-year strategy. So that it's really ambitious. And of course, if you read it, you'll think, well, of course we want to achieve those things, but it's about how we get together and do that. And this council plays a really integral and really important part in that, not least because so many of the levers that we have at our disposal are entirely related to those wider determinants of health. So we're a really powerful organisation within this structure, and we need to use that. We need to take that responsibility, and we need to work with all of our partners, including our health partners. And Councillor McGee, you mentioned pooling of budgets. Of course, that's always going to be one of the sort of more difficult parts of this process. It always was going to be, and it will be. However, as you probably know, that's done through Section 75 arrangements. And I think you'll be aware that the Better Care Fund is already a really good example of us working across health and social care through Section 75 agreements. And, that will probably be the way forward as we develop, particularly when you look at the collaboratives. It's, the desire is there. We're working really well with our partners, and that's certainly mentioned in this strategy as part of the way forward. I'm delighted that we've got this far. The next steps for this strategy are to go to our North Health and Wellbeing Board, and then from there to the Integrated Partnership in December. And you'll also have noted, by the way, that this isn't complete. There are sections of it that still need developing. So this is very much a draft, but it's important that partners get a good sight of it and are able to feed into it before it goes in its final form to government in December. In draft form in December. Yeah, final one in February. So I would encourage any of you who haven't seen it to really have a good read of it. Because everything that we do fits into this strategy, and we're going to be very important drivers of making this happen. The other part of the report is to give an update on the progression of the Northamptonshire ICS development of the North Place as we're implementing it. And I'm delighted to say that this week, on Monday, we had the launch of our first Community Wellbeing Forum, the East Northants Community Wellbeing Forum. So as long as I get out of here in time, I'll be going to the Kettering one this afternoon at 12:30, and then there's the Wellingborough one tomorrow, and then Corby next week. The only one I'm not going to be able to make is the Corby one because of a very important development workshop day for public health. So I apologise that I won't be there for that one. But it was great to see that group coming together, very well represented from across the different organisations that are going to be key in being able to bring together the intelligence and the resources to be able to solve some of the problems that we have locally. And then we have the launch of our 2 pilot local area partnerships. Councillor McGee, when you were talking particularly about some of the entrenched problems that we have, and where we need to really focus on particular communities with particular problems, that's very much going to be driven by those local area partnerships who are going to have already public health have, if you look in this document, there's the overarching data about Northamptonshire, and it's split into North Northamptonshire and West Northamptonshire. The community wellbeing forums will also have a data set that drills down into all of the issues within that area, and then the local area partnerships also. They'll have really key data about their communities, and that's being developed as we speak. So we will be delivering services according to the need that's identified, but not only through data, through talking to local people and funneling in all of that information to understand what the need is and where it is. It's all going, it's all happening, I'm pleased to say, after a long period of time of having, discussing and working out and trying to understand how best to deliver the integrated care system across our area. It's now moved into a phase of actually delivering, and I think it's one of those things that we'll learn as we go. We can think we've got it all right and we know the best ways to do it, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of adjustment as we go along. particularly, I think, in working out which partners need to be in which meetings so that we're not all constantly redoing the same pieces of work. I think that's absolutely vital. We don't want to be creating extra structures that are not needed. So that's a sort of a whistle-stop tour of where we are and the strategy. And so I would like to propose the recommendations at 3.1, which are for the executive to consider the alignment of our NNC strategies with the development of the Integrated Care Northamptonshire Strategy, Live Your Best Life, and note the progress of the Integrated Care Partnership North Place development and implementation in its role in delivering this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison, and I commend this piece of work that's been done. It's absolutely fantastic, and through you and your Director of Adult Social Services, pass my thanks on to the team there as well. Councillor Howe, you'd like to say something?
I would indeed. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think this is a really positive step forward, and there's an awful lot of work being done here. I did attend the Area Community Wellbeing Forum earlier this week, and I must say that everybody involved and that was in that room was extremely engaged in this project and how it was going to move forward. And it was really interesting that the conversations around the room about who we needed to engage with, you know, looking at every aspect of every area, and the names were coming out, and it was great that everybody was so engaged and bringing out that information. So it was a delight to go. I couldn't stay for the whole meeting because there was so much going on and everybody was so engaged. I had to go off to another meeting, but real positive vibes from all of that meeting, and I'm sure, you know, you'll probably get exactly the same from all the other area ones as well. So I think this is a really positive move forward, and I echo everybody's congratulations on what you've achieved so far. Look forward to seeing the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brackenbury.
Well, thank you, Chair. Yes, Emily, I absolutely welcome this document, and I welcome the ambitious vision that is, you know, tying all the various stakeholders together. It is very interesting that healthcare and well-being seems to be proportionally impacted by the health and care received as 20%, lifestyle choices estimated to be 30%, and population genetics and the wider economic, physical and social environments of 50%, which is extremely interesting in terms of balance of setting priorities, because of course it isn't all hospitals and sort of literal health delivery. There is such a wider context to it. So I really welcome the joined up thinking that this document encapsulates. And my last point, and I know Councillor Harrison's absolutely on the ball, this is a multi-agency approach. This operates across the county. This operates with many, many different stakeholders. And I just am sure that Northamptonshire's influence and governance in this strategy will not be forgotten. And I know that the portfolio holder will be very much taking that forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Lawman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted to see this report, along with others. I was pleased to attend both of the health inequality workshops that were held recently, and Ms Gilt was a speaker there. So, and one of the things that came very much out of the second one was the starting to formulate the local forums, the LAPs, and that gives the local people an opportunity to directly engage in setting the health agenda in their area. And I hope that means a lot of prevention work as well, because prevention obviously is far better than cure in all respects. So I'm delighted to see it, and it's a good piece of work, and I look forward to the actual formulation of all this and moving forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Just looking around the table. Councillor Harrison, would you like to just sum up briefly?
Thank you. Thanks for all your supportive comments. I think it's really important that we all keep as close to this as possible, and I'll always be doing that and making sure that you are all as close as possible to this, because it's a very important piece of work. Councillor Brackenbury, Councillor Lawman, I've forgotten which one of you it was, whichever one of you it was that talked about early intervention and prevention, it's absolutely key if we're actually going to make a difference to people's lives. It's no good waiting until they're ill and focusing everything on healthcare and hospitals and so on. We really need to make that what people call a left shift, so that we're getting to people soon, earlier. And that's when you look at this, when you look at the strategy, it starts with the best start in life, the best education, etc. You know, going through that life cycle, because at every point, the better outcomes we can achieve there, the better they'll be all the way through life. So absolutely, I think that's absolutely key to this policy. And I recommend the recommendations.
Well, Councillor Harrison, I'm pleased you recommend the report to the Executive. Please, may I find a seconder, please? Councillor Lawman, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 140 of the physical agenda pack and 596 of the electronic pack. So they've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you. So we now move on to item 14, Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board, Annual Report 2021 to 2022. To you, Councillor Harrison, and I believe you need to make a slight recommendation change on this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we missed a third part of the recommendation of the report, so I just read that out to you now. So in the recommendations at 3.1, we've got A and B, which remain as they are, but we need to add C, which is to recommend the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board annual report be taken to full council for consideration and noting at its meeting on the 24th of November. So if we could add that as a 3.1C recommendation.
Thank you very much. Would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you. So this again is, we had the previous year's report not that long ago, so I'm pleased to say that we're now at the right point in time. We've caught up. COVID is no longer having quite the same effect that it was before, and this is now on time. The Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board annual report is something that we have to produce statutorily. The Safeguarding Adults Board has to publish a strategic plan for each financial year and its strategy for achieving those objectives. Has to publish the annual report, including what's been achieved in the year, what it's done to implement the strategy, what members have achieved, and findings of reviews. And its other responsibility is to conduct safeguarding adult reviews in accordance with Section 44 of the Care Act. So this annual report takes you through the progress that the board has made against the strategy. And it takes you through what the subgroups have been doing. The delivery board, which had 5 key themes this year: raising awareness of safeguarding and what the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board does, learning from safeguarding adult reviews, understanding the impact of COVID-19. The difference, I'm going to call it NSAB from now on, if that's okay, makes, and homelessness. In addition to that, updates from the subgroup chairs are brought forward, including the Adult Risk Management Oversight Board, homelessness each meeting, mental health, Section 140 policy update, learning disability review, suicide prevention, and exploitation. The Communications and Engagement subgroup has done a variety of work this year, including the Report It campaign, an information video on the Adult Risk Management Toolkit, then the relaunch with the police of the Herbert Protocol, and then a launching of the Tricky Friends animation, which Norfolk Safeguarding Adults Board allowed us to use. The independent scrutineer produced a safeguarding podcast with Voluntary Impact Northamptonshire. engagement has gone up over the year, I'm pleased to say. And I should mention, because I just mentioned the independent scrutineer, we brought in an independent scrutineer for this year, Jane Geraghty, who's been overseeing the work that we're doing and helping us to focus on gaps and making sure that we're fulfilling all of our duties. The Learning and Development subgroup has put on a range of learning events for our partners across Northamptonshire. And a good many of those are learning events from the Safeguarding Adults reviews that have been undertaken and completed. And then the Quality and Performance subgroup has been taken over as the leadership of that has been taken over by the independent scrutineer, driving quality and performance there. What you'll see is that through the year, various safeguarding adult reviews were completed and learning from that taken on board. And then the safeguarding adult review recommendations from previous reviews has all been undertaken, apart from there's one outstanding item, and that's to do, I think, with an IT development piece within the Children's Trust, and that is still due to take place. We've had some brilliant weeks of learning over last year, in November. We had a large number of events for colleagues to join, to learn from and to take part in, and we had really good feedback from that. I think it's next week or the week after, we've got another week of learning coming up to learn from each other and how to do things in the best possible way. You'll also find reports from all of the key partners in the Safeguarding Adults Board. So we've got the Northamptonshire Clinical Commissioning Group, who is now obviously the Integrated Care Board. We have a report here from North Northamptonshire Council, and then from Northamptonshire Police, all outlining the development and the progress they've made on the strategy over the year. And then at the end of the report, you get some more detail on the safeguarding adult reviews. These are undertaken when an adult in the area dies as a result of abuse or neglect, whether known or suspected, and there's concern that partner agencies could have worked more effectively to protect the adult. And the Safeguarding Adult Board must also arrange a SAR, a Safeguarding Adult Review, if the same circumstances apply, where an adult is still alive but has experienced serious neglect or abuse. So you'll see towards the end of page 14 that during the year there were 6 referrals. One of them's completed. That's the male suicide that took place out of county, and that was approved to be referred in August 2020 and completed in July 2021. The other 5 are all awaiting approval or ongoing, and they will be reported back into the Adult Safeguarding Board. So that's a sort of a whistle-stop tour of the report. There's lots of facts and figures in the back about number of concerns raised and which ones became inquiries and so on. So there's a lot of information in there for people to look at and to assure themselves of the quality of the safeguarding work that's going on, and that we're constantly working to improve and do better for the future. So with that, I'm very happy to take questions from the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Harris, and I absolutely welcome this report that's come forward as well. And I also welcome the amendment to the recommendations to add another recommendation at C. Safeguarding is something that we're all responsible for, and it would be great for this to go to full council to put their eyes over this report and understand what the breadth and depth of this report actually means for us as a council. Looking around the table for members who want to make any Comments, Councillor Pentland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to see this report come forward. There's so much detail in there for everybody to go over, and as Councillor Smith has just said, and as the campaign says, safeguarding is everybody's business, so it is really useful to be able to go through all of this. It's useful to be able to see what has worked well and the learnings going forward, so that we can make this an even stronger service in the future. So thank you to everybody for their work on this.
Thank you. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again for a very clear report, and you know, congratulations to everybody who's put it together. I mean, safeguarding is one of these things where we can never be complacent. There's always something out there that could well happen, but it is pleasing that in the priorities, the strategic priorities set out in the strategic plan, that every single one have either been achieved or there is a bit of ongoing activity. But, you know, clearly there is good work going on and clearly there's very good oversight. So, you know, it's reassuring, but I also welcome this report being reviewed by full council, because absolutely, you know, we are all involved in safeguarding, and we're all indeed corporate parents where it affects underage children, but you know, we all do have a responsibility for the residents of Northamptonshire, especially the vulnerable ones.
Thank you, Councillor Brackery. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I totally echo the comments from fellow colleagues about especially the amount of data and information that's in this report. It's really, really interesting. And something I wanted to pick up on was the domestic abuse, actually, because that's a really positive step forward. That over the last 12 months, the domestic abuse recordings of domestic abuse, oh, my computer's gone off, have dropped by 7.2% within the county, and 6% fewer victims of domestic abuse crime in the same reporting period. And that's at odds with the national trend, which is really good. But also, what I liked about this was that the victim satisfaction rate now sits at 90.7%, and I think that's really good, because obviously they're doing some really good work there. And the fact that we're sort of butting the trend in Northamptonshire and trying to reduce the numbers of domestic abuse going on here is really positive, I think. So, thank you.
Councillor Harrison, would you like to just sum up?
Thank you, and thanks for your positive comments. I know the members of the board will be very pleased to hear all of that. And I think in response to Councillor Howell's point at the end, one of the really important parts of what we do is making safeguarding personal, and that's about making sure that the people that we're dealing with are front and centre in making choices for themselves and guiding what we do rather than doing to them. So I think that's another very important part of safeguarding. You know, as I say, thank you for your support. Just another note, the chairmanship of the Safeguarding Adults Board has now gone to David Watts, our Executive Director. So next year's report will be written by him. And with that, I propose the recommendations at 3.1.
Okay, that's good. And with the addition of a recommendation C, that this be taken to council for their note in as well. So on that basis, the recommendations are set out on 150 of the physical agenda pack and 650 of the electronic pack. They've been moved. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brackenbury. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to item 15, the annual report of Northamptonshire Children's Trust. And I'd like to invite Councillor Leanne Buckingham to the floor, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, and hello, Executive and members and officers. I fully support the document being sent to full council, as I think that's what we're supposed to do anyway. Unfortunately, the appendices in page 710 haven't been working for me on 3 different occasions, and I don't think I'm the only one in that. Thank you very much, David, for making sure that I had those to look at this morning. There's, of course, lots of data in those appendices, in the KPI performance document and the scorecard that I've yet to digest, but as soon as this is going to full council, that'll be fine. We can do that at a later date. Having read the annual report, I'm concerned with the lack of detail. Much of the document sets out the local picture in terms of the challenges we face, but there's little detail of the work being done and the strategies being used. I'm concerned about the information on page 701 of the electronic. Forgive me, I've not got a paper copy to give you a reference to. Of the 11 areas for audit, only 4 have been completed. I'm a fixed believer in people before profits, but our resources are not endless. I don't think that it's surprising that the Children's Trust has gone grossly over budget when they've yet to audit their own budget management processes. Other areas that have gone to audit, that should have gone to audit that haven't, are social care transport, placement, contact, foster care placements, etc. You'll be able to see that. I'm sure that there is some fantastic work that's being done by officers. I've seen officers going above and beyond, but that can't take away that there's still much to do. And that needs to be set from a strategic level. I do not think that officers have a single moment of extra capacity that they would be able to deliver anymore. We need to have better insight into our children, how they need to access care. We need to get upstream and stem the flow. At the moment, we're just waiting for them to come off the end. And we need to increase the capacity to service young people quicker and within our own county. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckingham. I would like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting.
Good morning. The annual report in Northamptonshire Children's Trust. This report clearly maps out the concerns that Children's Trust has, not only to deal with unaccompanied asylum seekers, 160 with adults, but children in care. The overspend is something which will be addressed this year in 2022-23. The report not said where these hubs are, and yet it's March when there's, so when are they going to be here? The SEND children are getting assessed by education psychologists to help them and create funding in schools. How many children are to be assessed this academic year? And how many education psychologists do we have in NNC? Where do all these children, are all these children assessed from last year? Poverty in children is on the increase. Who monitors this? Children could slip through the net unless schools pick them up. What measures are being taken? How many children still live 20 miles from NNC, and who are in care? A lot of children due to COVID require speech therapy. What help is there here, and how many do we have for children in schools? There is some criticisms about NNC having its own Director of Children's Services, but I feel this was the best thing we've done to ensure that children in NNC get looked after. We are an individual council and we must look to the future. In the past, West had everything. They did not, for example, children who need extra support, getting it. And Ofsted report will be out soon and could make interesting reading on how we have moved forward in ensuring that children are looked after and get a first-class education. Looked after children must be part of social workers' remit. highly qualified staff must be part of NNC. From this report, we must ensure this happens in future. Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell, thank you for your very insight-in view on this. I'm now going to ask Councillor Edwards to read to the report, please. Introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the two councillors eloquently speaking, as per usual, and I know you're both very passionate, both sit on the EAP, and thank you very much for that. Dorothy, I think some of the items you are raising are actually not part of the Children's Trust and are part of Children's Services. So what I think I'll do is I will, with the Director of Children's Services, sit down with you and just go through with some of those points that you are raising. I do think some of those answers you've already had, but I'm quite happy to go through them again with you. And Councillor Buckingham, the audits, there was 11 audits completed between 2021 and 2022, not 3. It does say that in the report, but... Say again. Okay. But anyway, so this is the report of the Children's Trust annual report, and you'll be pleased to know that it did go to scrutiny last Tuesday, I think it was, or Monday, and it will go to full council on the 24th of this month. In it does talk about the impending Ofsted inspection, and as you know, we have had Ofsted in, and that report will be published on the 25th of December. No, it won't. That's Christmas Day. It's the 25th of November, where currently it is embargoed for that. So the Children's Trust have forwarded some initial suggestions and amendments to the current basket of KPIs that are used to monitor the NCT's performance. Now, we're going to review those KPIs in line with the Ofsted report. So when that is published, we will go through those KPIs and review those that may or may not have come up in the impending report. So it has been agreed that any changes will not be agreed until after the inspection that is expected, and the inspection is in good time to take stock of services delivered by NCT and future arrangements. Councillor Buchan, you did talk about the overspend. So the overspend has, so we're talking about the 2021 to 22, not 22 to 23. So the 20 to 21, I get confused with these numbers. So the overspend has had COVID backing from financial management from that, and also they have given their reserves as well into that. So they have actually, it's only slightly over for that financial year. So the annual report was discussed at the meeting of the Scrutiny Commission on the 1st of November, and the Commission noted that demand-led pressures were increasing and put pressure on the Children's Trust budget. You all know that people and placement are increasing, so they are working with North Northants Council to look at this and ways that we can get better value for money, but most importantly, better service for the children that need it. The children are put at the heart of everything that the Children's Trust and the Children's Services do, and that is the most important thing to always remember. And to that degree, that children are always involved with implications that we put forward, and they are always consulted on that as well. If you haven't read the report, do read the report. It contains a lot of information about good things and things that do need looking at. I do take your point about the bullet points that you click on, and it wasn't easy to do that, and so we need to look at a better way of doing that when we publish it for full council. So the recommendation on page 676 is to note the content of the annual report that was completed in line with the service delivery contract, and note the proposal to further discuss and agree any amendments to the service delivery contract following the Ofsted inspection of the local authority children's services, and recommend that the annual report is taken to Council for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Members, do we have any comments to make on this report? Okay, thank you very much. So the report has been moved by Councillor Edwards. Can I look for someone to second that report, please? Councillor Howe. Thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 156 of the physical pack and 676 of the electronic pack. Can I have a show of hands of those in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 16. And I'd like to invite Councillor Lloyd Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This council is required to have a council tax support scheme. 2 years ago, this council set the level of support at 25% after harmonisation of the 4 legacy councils. At the meeting of the full council on the 1st of December 2021, it was agreed to keep the level the same. This report requests that Executive recommend to full council that we again keep the level of council tax support the same. Changing the level would incur the cost of consultation. Lowering the level would also place extra pressure on the council's budget, and raising it would move it into above break-even point. The council tax collected in 2021-22 equates to 96.42% of the net debit. This is 0.55% above the collection rate of 2021. The amount of council tax collected for the period 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of August 2022 equates to 48.55% of the net debit. This is 1.0105% above the collection rate at the same point last year. There have been concerns about the ability of some residents to pay the minimum 25% council tax, and as I have repeated, under Section 13A of the Finance Act, this council runs a council tax discretionary discount scheme. This scheme makes awards to help mitigate any unforeseen or exceptional hardship circumstances that threaten taxpayers' ability to pay the council tax. For the financial year 21-22, 257 applications were received. Of these, 14 were awarded and 243 refused. From April to August this year, we have received 142 applications. Of these, there have been 5 awards, 104 refusals and 33 awaiting assessment. The majority of those refused have excess income, so it is considered that they are able to make their council tax payments. No one has appealed the refusals, and officers can clearly show methodology used. In nearly all cases, revenues and benefits social inclusion teams have spoken with customers and have been able to help in other areas such as discretionary housing payment applications, personal independence payment applications, utilities and general money and debt advice. So considering this, I'm happy to propose the recommendations in Section 3, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bundy. And I know you make reference to the social inclusion team in your report, and the Chief Executive and I had the privilege of meeting some of those individuals at one of our offices, must be 3 weeks ago now, and and looking firsthand the type of work and support they offer our most vulnerable individuals across our county. So it's a good facility that we have in place to help people through those difficult times. Just looking around if anyone else has anything to say on the report. Okay, so Councillor Bunday has moved that report. Can we have a seconder, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. So on page 164 of the physical agenda pack, you will see the recommendations, and 712 of the electronic pack will also have the recommendations there. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So moving on to item 17, indicative budget timeline and scrutiny process 23-24 update. Councillor Bunday, I'd like you to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the 18th of October, this report was taken to the Finance and Resources Scrutiny Committee, and paragraphs 5.11 refers to the timeline for the Northampton Children's Trust, and 5.13 for the budget setting timeline. Slightly different to previous years. As in paragraph 6.3, phase 1 will be a current in-year scrutiny, and they have started last Monday and will continue next week. And then phase 2 we'll look at the budget proposals in January. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bunday, looking round to see if any members have got anything to say about this. No. Okay, so that has been proposed by Councillor Bunday. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brackenbury, thank you very much. So the recommendations are on page 172 of the physical agenda pack and 720 of the electronic pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. We now move to item 18, the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report to September 22. And I would like to invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. It is a statutory requirement to present the Treasury management activity and prudential indicators to Executive twice yearly. This report sets out this information for the first half of the financial year ended 30th of September 2022, in accordance with SIPFA's Code of Practice on Treasury Management. Appendix A highlights the economic environment in which the Treasury activities have been delivered, and as members are no doubt aware, this has come at a very difficult and challenging time. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine has continued to put pressure on global inflation, and the economic outlook for the UK and world growth remains weak. The UK political situation towards the end of the period following the mini-budget increased uncertainty further. Interest rates have risen as the Bank of England endeavour to keep inflation under control. Section 2 of Appendix A sets out to inform members of the global issues that will affect the Council. The balance sheet summary can be found at paragraph 3.1, which shows that on the 30th of September 2022, the authority's estimated net investment is £133.5 million, arising from its revenue and capital income and expenditure. The Treasury Management Summary is at paragraph 3.4. Interest rate increases have seen a significant increase in the cost of short-term borrowing. The Council will have to consider carefully, as interest rates rise, the costs of using surplus cash balances to fund internal borrowing. The borrowing position of this Council is set out at paragraph 4.3 and shows a reduction of some £30.3 million. The Treasury investment position is set out at paragraph 5.3 and the performance of our Treasury management at paragraph 7.2. I'm happy to propose the recommendation at paragraph 3, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. Do we have any comments around the table? No. Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Bunday. Can I look for someone to second the report, please? Councillor Edwards, thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 186 of the physical agenda pack and 734 of the electronic pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 19, Capital Outrun 2022-23, Draft Outrunners Period 6. And back to you, Councillor Bunday.
This report sets out the 2022-23 outturn for the capital programme as at period 6. The position for the general fund and housing revenue account are set out in 5.1 and 5.8 accordingly. The general fund shows an underspend of £50.8 million against a revised budget of £99.4 million. A significant proportion of the capital programme to be delivered in 22-23 includes projects that were agreed within the legacy authorities as well as new schemes. Focus has also been on those projects that have grant funding in order to ensure the terms and conditions of the grant funding are met and minimises the risk of the council having to repay any of the grant funding. The housing revenue account shows an underspend of £17.1 million compared to the revised budget of £28.9 million. Appendix A and B show the capital programme by project. The underspend is mainly due to delays on site, finalising agreements and resource availability. Together with profiling issues, some projects have been included as an upfront total cost, where others have been profiled over several years. During 22-23 monitoring, we will continue to review the profiling of projects and provide a consistent approach in the presentation of the capital programme across North Northamptonshire. As part of the ongoing budget setting for 23-24, all service areas have been requested to review their projects within the capital programme in order to confirm the likely profile of spend, together with a consistent approach in how schemes are shown within the capital programme. This may mean reprofiling in the future years or moving some legacy projects into the development pool for reconsideration and further updated business cases. The deliverability of the programme in future must also consider the current and potential cost related to inflationary pressures. These may require some scoping changes and other mitigation in schemes that remain in the original budget envelope. Again, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of section 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Monday. Members, is there any comments on any of this? No? Okay. Councillor Monday has moved the report. Can I look for someone to second that report, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. So the recommendations are on page 202 of the physical agenda pack and 750 on the electronic pack. Have a show of hands in favour, please. Thank you. So we now move on to item 20, and I would like to invite again Councillor Lloyd Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are 5 items on the capital the update to the capital programme this month. Garden communities, sustainable urban extensions, an increase of £1.428 million to the capital programme. This will be funded from the Homes England Garden Communities grant. Secondly, changing places, an increase of £497,000 to the capital programme, of which 186 in 22-23 and £311,000 in 23-24. And this will be funded from the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and £1.67 million from capital receipts. The third item is Discover North Northamptonshire Tourism Hub, which is an increase of £245,000 to the capital programme, which is funded from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And then 2 items which we need to recommend to full council chair: street lighting, the upgrade project, which is an increase of £6.17 million to the capital programme, £3 million in this year, in 22-23, yes, this year, and £2.157 million in 23-24, and £980,000 in 24-25. And this will be funded by borrowing. And then children's residential home provision, an increase of £762,000 to the capital programme, which will be funded from borrowing again. With that, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of section 3, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Bunday. I'm looking to the floor for some speakers. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. Just very much to welcome the report and to welcome the funding we've received for garden communities from the Homes England Garden Communities grant, which is £1.5 million, which will be very welcome to assist in providing building blocks for growth for development in North Northamptonshire, which is going to provide something over 25,000 new homes and, crucially, the appropriate employment and infrastructure. There are 7 projects listed at 5.2, which I won't read out, but they are all extremely interesting, and I particularly welcome the Rushden East A6 connectivity, because getting across that busy road to the east of Rushden, which is pretty much a bypass, when you're building a sustainable urban extension to the other side, is going to be absolutely crucial for the development of this sustainable urban extension and for its inclusion as a part of the community of Rushden. So I very much welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Lawman.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a couple of things to pick out. We've already mentioned the street lighting, so obviously I support that. I can hopefully look forward to an enhanced station offering at Wellingborough. That's the centre of the Stanton Cross Zoo, and very much need enhanced facilities there. But one thing I am welcoming greatly is the Changing Places budget, because that enables people, particularly disabled people and those with young children, to change in a hygienic and safe and presentable way in various sites, and hopefully some of our tourist attractions can benefit that, so that some people who may be not able to risk going to some of these venues will be able to access them and enjoy them like the rest of the people. So, and particularly I'm hoping that places such as Chester House and Stanwick Lakes may benefit for that in the future. As I'm told, we are now able to change the sites as we bid for more money. So that's a very welcome facility for people.
Thank you, Councillor Longman. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's good to see that this money is now being made available, and I think you'll note that some of the connectivity work that's going on will obviously link through to the Greenway, which is what we've been talking about previously, so I won't harp on about it, but it will improve accessibility for everybody via walking and cycling. I'd also like to, because I didn't manage to say it when I spoke previously about the tourism hub, I think it's worth highlighting the collaborative working actually with the Crown Estate and the fact that they are allowing us to have a long-term free rent lease on the premises at Rushton Lake. So I'd just like to thank them for coming on board really and supporting us in this scheme as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howard. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really going to echo the comments of Councillor Lawman on the Changing Places funding. I think this is a really important scheme that will enable people who currently may not feel that they're able to go out and participate in life publicly because the facilities just aren't there. This will make a massive difference to them, and so I'm just really pleased to see that the funding is coming through and that we've already got ideas of how to spend it and where. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Very much welcome the extra £760,000 for residential home for children in care. I just think this is a really important thing. I mean, it says in here that we ensure that the highest quality provision for all children and young people in care, and quite rightly so. So I just want to say thank you and welcome that, and look forward to possibly a new home being built in Northamptonshire.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Bunday, did you just wrap up on that?
Thank you, Chair. Not really very much to say. I think there are some big ticket items there, the children's residential homes, as Councillor Edwards has mentioned, and also the LEDs, which I think is going to be an investment to save, as we discussed earlier.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bunday. Well, Councillor Bunday has moved the report. Can I look to someone to second the report? So, Councillor Edwards. Thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 222 of the physical agenda pack and 770 of the electronic pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 21, budget forecast for 22-23 as of period 6. I would again like to invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to set out the forecast revenue budget outturn position of 22-23 for the General Fund and Housing Revenue Account. This monitoring report sets out the material financial issues identified since 2022-23 budget was set in February 22 and is based on the income and expenditure as at the end of September 22, period 6. The forecast outturn of the General Fund is an overspend of £3.857 million against a net budget of £300.075 million. This is an adverse movement of £157,000 to the report that I presented in period 5. The details of the movements against the budget are set out in the report and summarised in the table at paragraph 4.3 of the report. The most significant pressure relates to Northamptonshire Children's Trust, where the forecast overspend is now estimated to be just over £11 million for 22-23, with a cost to North Northants Council of £4.9 million, the remainder falling to West Northamptonshire Council. Outside this overspend from the Trust, The other services of the Council are within budget overall, allowing for the use of reserves as indicated in the report. Generally, the spend pressures of the Council are driven by inflationary increases of pay and prices and demand. For example, within the Place Directorate, there is currently an estimated £800,000 overspend on utility costs against the service. This is after the use of £500,000 for the Council's corporate contingency to partially offset the cost. In addition, there is a forecast pressure of £566,000 for street lighting and a further £137,000 for traffic signals, both as a result of increasing energy costs and allowing for the energy price cap reduction. The leisure sector also continues to face significant pressures, most notably from the increase in utility costs, and whilst the government has recently announced financial support to businesses, this is still expected to result in a pressure to the Council's leisure providers. The report includes a recommendation that up to £556,000 is set aside to meet such costs, funded from the General Risk Reserve and utilising money set aside from 21-22. The agreed pay award of 22-23 is above the budgeted assumptions of 3%, with a balance predominantly being met in year through the use of contingency budget. Overall pressures have in part been mitigated through the underspends in a number of areas across staffing, supplies and services. Notably, there are lower borrowing costs of £601,000 due to the lower levels of external borrowing than originally forecast, and the interest receivable is forecast to be £640,000 above budget owing to the increase in interest rates. There are also some areas where the budget requirements indicated on disaggregation from the County Council have proven to be in excess of the need and can now be released in year. The housing revenue account comprises of two neighboured accounts for Corby and Kettering. The draft outturn forecast for the housing revenue account is a forecast underspend of £93,000 against an approved budget of £36.27 million. The details of the movements against budget are set out in the report. The main issues, risks and unknowns that we face continue to be around inflationary impact and the changes within demand-led services, notably the Children's Trust. The national and indeed global economy is seeing significant inflationary pressures that could not have been foreseen at this scale only a few months ago. The Bank of England increased the base rate on the 3rd of November by 0.75% to 3%, which is the highest level of base rate has been since November 2008, when it was also 3%. The CPI inflation figures for September of 10.1% are slightly higher than August, which was at 9.9%. These are at unprecedented levels compared to previous years. As mentioned earlier, councils, like many organisations, continue to see the impact of price rises, particularly around fuel and energy costs. A number of services are provided under contract, and it is likely that the authority will experience pressure from suppliers to increase costs. As part of the budget setting for 22-23, the Council included growth to address forecast inflationary increases in light of the position known at the time. However, the significant and continuing increase in the rate of inflation has exceeded these expectations. Similarly, pay demands have outstripped budgetary provision. We are also acutely aware that the economic downturn has a potential to adversely impact service needs and future income generation, such as business rates. We will be keen to hear and understand the details of the Chancellor's autumn statement due on the 17th of November and its financial implications for our residents, businesses and our own services. We recognise that this is and will continue to be a challenging time, but we'll be working hard to balance our finances whilst protecting vital services, particularly those to our most vulnerable residents. I'm happy to propose the recommendation of paragraph 3, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bunday. So Councillor Bunday does articulate very well some very challenging headwinds that we have, or we're battling, I would suggest, at the moment. Inflationary pressures, utility cost increases and various other cost increases, which are all adding to the position. I will be perfectly honest, the overspend that's currently predicted within the Children's Trust is concerning, and we will do absolutely everything we can do as an authority, and as I know many of you members already know, there is limited scope for us to be able to hold the Trust to account. But we will do everything we can do to minimise that cost to this authority. I'd just like to look around the room to see if we've got any comments from other members. Councillor Lawman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, it's a very comprehensive narrative, so I just wanted to update the Executive really on one item in fleet vehicles. There's a pressure there, but just to confirm that we have actually now, just last week, placed an order for vehicles, and included in that with some electric ones, so we are able to move forward in that as well. So hopefully they may not arrive in very well into this financial year, but they certainly will help us for future.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Bunday has moved the report. Can I look for someone to second it, please? Councillor Lawman, thank you very much. So the recommendations are on page 232 and 233 of the agenda pack, and 780 and 781 of the electronic pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. Urgent items of business are confirmed. I have received no requests to consider any urgent items of business at this meeting. So, exclusion of the press and public for the next part of this meeting. I confirm that there is one exempt item for consideration at this meeting. I therefore propose to exclude the public and press from the meeting during consideration of the following items of business in accordance with Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, because exempt information may be disclosed. Please, can I have a mover to that, please? Councillor Howell, thank you very much, and Councillor Harrison seconding.